Hi folks, hope you're well. Welcome to episode 5 of View from the Touchline. This week I'm delighted to welcome James Allan to the podcast. James, thanks very much for giving up your time to speak to me this afternoon. Really appreciate it. I was really keen to get James on because I think it's important as coaches to get views and learn from people who are also involved in the player development and coaching process, but look at things from a different perspective. So James is currently working for his hometown club, Newcastle United, as a first-team sports scientist, and he's also got experience of working in the Premier League for Southampton. James, my first question today, normally I ask coaches what the role of coaching means to them, but for you, I want to start by asking, what does the role of a sports scientist look like and mean to you?
Yeah, great to be on. Thanks, Connell. Thanks for the intro. I think, to put it simply, it's just the development of anything to do with the team or their athlete. I think generally in sort of my area will be more physical, but there's sports science is such a broad spectrum, really. From there you can break that down into nutrition, strength and conditioning, biomechanics, a whole host of things. I think in a football club, in my role at the minute, generally it's to improve the individual athlete, to break down the demands of a 90-minute game. Where's the most intense period? Where's the actions we're missing out on? Where do we need a little bit more from? And just to aid the tactical coaches in getting the most out of the team, really.
Brilliant. I think that's a great answer. Just want to start then the rest of our discussion by asking you about your pathway to date. And obviously, when you first realised you wanted to work in sports science, it wasn't a case of you went straight into working in the Premier League. So, what has been your pathway up to now? How did you get here? What experiences have you had?
So quite a few from university. So I mean, it's hard to really think that I only just graduated this summer, really. So if we go back over, so first team sports scientist at Newcastle at the minute. Last year was assistant sports scientist, sort of on a part-time basis while I finished my undergrad. Year before that, sandwich year course, placement year with Southampton, where I met yourself. And then lots of bits before that, to name a few, was involved with Durham Cricket, shadowed the first team there and delivered pre-season academy sessions. Girls under 18s, rugby centre of excellence camps, rugby strength and conditioning, shadowed at Durham University Rowers. And early years in sort of my first year at university, coached football under 11s at grassroots and was a all-stars cricket activator, it was called, for intro cricket under 5s to under 8s, which was a very interesting experience.
Nice. And you've mentioned there quite a few voluntary roles and roles where you were maybe shadowing more experienced coaches. How important was that in terms of your early development and in terms of leading you to where you are now?
Yeah, I think massive. To be fair, that's why I mentioned so many, and especially draw on the cricket, because actually it was from the taking this activators role, this voluntary role, to lead intro cricket sessions. Never played cricket, never really watched cricket, but just went with it. From there, one of the guys from Durham Cricket, who was the kind of run most of the cricket in the Northeast, watched one of my sessions, really sort of just enjoyed my enthusiasm, how I coach. Just got chatting to him, said, like, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And I sort of mentioned more strength and conditioning and as high a level as possible, really. And he put us in touch with the first team strength and conditioning coach at Durham Cricket. So that was a big experience early on to get into a professional environment straight off the back of that. That then really helped us in the interview with Southampton, because there was a lot of experience, there's a lot of things to draw on. And I think that is what helped get us into the first team role at Southampton and the placement. Did a good job there. The head of sports science referred us to the head of sports science at Newcastle when I was coming back to the Northeast. Had a brief little interview and got the role there. So I think you just never know where things are going to go. I think one thing I would say on voluntary roles is when you're at uni, you kind of people tell you to take as many opportunities as you can. I think it's not bad advice, but I would say take as many opportunities that you can give 110% at. Don't take a voluntary role if you're just going to stand and you think, I don't really want to do this. I don't really know why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it to clock up so many voluntary hours and put it on my CV. Because I don't think that'll lead you anywhere. I wasn't passionate about cricket. Wasn't passionate about really delivering this program really, but that was a big learning thing, that if you go plan the sessions, treat it as if the session where you want to be almost, and you're going to get given more opportunities to give the best account of yourself for people to see that.
Yeah, I think what you said there is so important, especially with the number of sports science students graduating in the UK just growing every year. But I think what you said about, taking voluntary opportunities that you can completely commit to and give the best yourself is really important. I think that's where the best development comes from and where you get the most out of the experience as well. And also, as you said, because you were completely invested in that voluntary role of the cricket, you impressed people and that's opened more doors for you. In terms of where you are now, obviously working for Newcastle in the Premier League, and we consider that very much a high performance environment, certainly the highest level of football in the UK. What have you learned from being in that environment, and what have the challenges been?
Yeah, I think the first thing to mention, I think when people talk about high performance environment, I think just because it's a high level doesn't mean it's high performing. I think that's important to know, and it's the people that create the environment. It's everyone around the club, so everybody has to be wanting to improve the team, no matter what role it is, have high standards and everything. This is what creates the environment. The lads have to want to win. Sports science has to want to develop. The kit man's got to want to put the kit out. The laundry men, women have got to wash the kit. Everybody has to do the small bits that it all goes into. And that really creates the environment. Yes, having a nice flash facility and all the rest of it helps, of course, massively, because straight away when you go in, you think, wow, this is impressive. Yeah, when you see some of these training grounds, but really, man, it's the people.
Yeah.
So I think, and don't be fooled, like, no matter who you are, like, when I obviously went into Southampton as a placement student, you're sort of the lowest rank. You're there for a year, you know where you are, but if you can add something at it, like contribute to that environment.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make. In terms of you being in that environment, as you said, at Southampton, you kind of went in as an intern or as a placement student. You're almost bottom of the pile. What challenges does that present? And also in your current role at Newcastle, being a young person involved in that environment, what challenges does that create, and how do you try and overcome them?
Yeah, so I mean, like, there's definitely frustrations, as I think, like from living with me and that, there's a lot of jobs at the bottom of the pile that need done. And is it right or wrong? I'm not sure, but you just have to almost earn that respect. And it can be a little bit frustrating, like, I don't want to fill up the water bottles for training every single day. Like, I want to have a bigger impact than that. But like I said before, when it's the people that create the environment, it needs done. So just do that, get them things done, get them done early, and then give yourself more time to make that bigger impact later on.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of the challenges, it's almost keeping your head a little bit, like, remember where you are. It's a very long journey. Don't get frustrated by the little things that you have to do. I think Southampton was a great place because I can imagine there's a lot of places out there that you go in as an intern just to do them jobs, but there's a lot more. I think from yourself and being at Southampton, there was a lot of good things in place, a lot of structures that really allow you to develop. I was given a lot of opportunities to coach and teach, but you have to earn that right almost. You have to show you're in it. You're in it with the team. You're in it with everyone else.
Definitely. And I think what you said about almost everyone having to do the little jobs that adds to the bigger picture, I think that's so important, especially in a football club environment. One thing I want to ask you about now is that we talk a lot on this podcast when we speak to coaches about building relationships with players and trying to get the best out of them that way. You're obviously in a unique environment where you're working with very high profile footballers, very rich footballers in some cases. How do you go about trying to build positive relationships with them and getting the most out of them?
I think like you would with anybody else, there's still people. Yes, they earn a lot more money than most, and certainly us. But how do you get the most out of anyone? How do you build a relationship with anyone? If you treat them as something else and something different, as this millionaire footballer and this high profile celebrity, then you'll never really connect with them. There's still people at the end of the day that have the same emotions. You know, in reality, they have the same problems. They have a lot of frustrations as well. They have family lives, challenges in that. They have contractual things. They still have stress at work. I know they go home and they're financially secure, you could say, but they get to that position because they generally, most of them want to be the best and want to win every single week. That is what has led them to there. Yes, they're very talented as well, but you know, most of them have had to work very hard to get there. So I think to build a relationship with them is, you know, I think it's a classic saying, you know, show them how much you care. But it is like you're in that process with them, and we all want to win. We're not going to win every week. Obviously, some teams have a better chance. Being at Newcastle and Southampton, they're not teams that are going to win week in, week out. But you're in that process with them, really. So just show them that, have high standards with them, listen to them, understand their frustrations. The hardest time to deal with players I often find is, you know, when they haven't made the starting 11, or especially if we've lost a couple of weeks in a row and the same 11 started and they're not sure why they're not getting a chance, and they're like, listen to them, like understand the frustrations, understand what they're going through, try your best to do that. And just all you can do is say, is there anything else I can do to help? Really, like, make sure they're on it physically. Make sure that isn't the part that's letting you down. If that is, then let's work together. Let's the coaches said, we don't think you're fast enough, we don't think you're fit enough. Like, let's make that the thing. That don't give them that excuse.
Great, that's a great insight. James, before we move on to questions that have been sent in by listeners, there's one thing I just want to ask you. What does your day-to-day role look like? What is an average day for you? Like, I know things change depending on how far out you are from a match day, or if you've had a match the day before, but can you just give people an insight into what an average day looks like for you at the club?
Yeah, certainly. So typical day for me is I normally arrive pretty early. I'll train myself first. I'll be in the gym, and then from there, what I consider the best perks of working in the training ground, get your breakfast made for you, get your dinner made for you. So head through to the canteen and get me breakfast, and then a few setup bits, like I say, still fill up the water bottles for training, prep all the GPS units, get all them in all the places, and then pretty much head into the gym for pre-activation. This can be very varied depending on the individual, just whatever pretty much they like to do before. We encourage everyone to be in it, being at different clubs, different coaches, some compulsory pre-activation, some not as compulsory, some more individual, some more team. So different approaches there. So then it'll be pre-activation, outside to training, generally around training, pre-season maybe lead on some sort of conditioning to the side. Often that would more be the head of sports science though, but depending if there's multiple groups, then I may have a group to lead. And then just assist around training, help the coaches, get the balls back, just little bits like that, just generally clear drills away and do anything to help make sure our training runs as smoothly as possible. Generally in terms of like the game sizes and the length and things like that are normally already preset. Maybe that there might be some adjustments on the day there and then, depending on how people feel, but generally it's already preset. Then come back in, like you say, depending on what day it is, there may be some kind of lower body loading, whether that's a strength or a power stimulus going on. If it's closer to a game or not, kind of one of them days, there might be a few lads wanting kind of upper body and core, things like that. So lead on them, and then download any GPS units, feedback, anything like that. My current role, I lead on the goalkeeper. The head of sports science generally leads on the outfield. After that, that's pretty much wrap up. Head home, ready for another day.
Great. The grind never stops at that level, does it?
Nah.
So we're going to move on to now, James, some questions that have been sent in by listeners. So earlier this week, put a thing out on Instagram, just asking people to send me questions, anything related to your role or anything about sports science in general. I must say, I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of questions that came in. Had over 30 questions sent in the end. So thank you to everyone who sent in a question. I'm not going to have time to go through them all, so apologies if your question isn't answered, but we'll try and get through as many of them as possible. The first one that was sent in asks, what is the biggest barrier or obstacle that you have to face in your role as a sports scientist?
I would say, the biggest thing I would say is this isn't so much my biggest obstacle at the minute, but the biggest obstacle of sports science in general is the understanding of what we do and with the coaches, with the technical coaches, the manager. So for an example, we say on a normal week Saturday game, on Tuesday we want to do a strength session, but he wants to do a mega outfield session. If you then do the mega outfield session, that then affects the loading in the gym because people come in tired, they say they don't want to do it, can't do that weight, blah, blah, blah. So I think the biggest challenge is joining the whole thing up. And I think there's some coaches that are starting more and more to understand it and the differences, and some not so much. But I think as soon as, all these departments in a football club can really come together, so sports science, performance analysis, the coaches probably being the main three, then you can really start to plan training and really start to maximize what it is you're doing in the week, really preparing for that game on the Saturday. Because I think if anyone's been a player listening and you have to go for extra runs because you haven't hit what we would say is the high speed running threshold for this week or what have you, they don't want to run at the end. So can we work with the technical coaches? How do we want to play on a Saturday? How do we build up this drill, or how do we make it relevant to something we want to do to hit these high speed running demands or whatever it is that we're trying to hit?
Brilliant. Second question is, how has COVID and the pandemic affected, firstly, pre-season this season, and then also your return to play protocols within the season?
So pretty mad. So this season was after we finished the last sort of 7 or 8 games from the COVID. We had, I think it was 3 weeks off and then a 3-week pre-season. I think that one of the biggest things that's come out of COVID actually is you've got to trust the players. When we do a sort of well-being apps and when we ask them how they are and things, you've got to listen and got to believe them and trust them. I think this year especially, just because it hasn't been normal and everybody's very individual, and you don't know how people are reacting to the shorter pre-season. And now the game schedule this year has been crazy. You know, like there's just been 2 games a week so often. Like there's been phases where it feels like we're in a tournament. To be fair, like there's just game after game after game, and it's just recover and go again. So it's been mad, but I honestly think the biggest impact is listening to the players, because no matter how much you plan and what you think's the best, if a player's fatigued to hell, then maybe he does need an extra recovery day. Maybe that is the best thing to do. So yeah, stranger really, but that would be my biggest take of what I would learn going forward from it, is that build a good relationship and trust them. And within that, you know, as I was imagining with tactical coaches and managers as well, you know, there's probably some key stakeholders that you believe more than others. You know, there's some lads that don't want to do anything, and there's the ones that want to push on and really do every session. And you learn to get a good gauge of where the group's at from maybe a few.
Yeah, I think as hard as this season's been, it's from a coaching and from a performance support staff perspective, you almost learn a lot about not only yourself but about the players, as you've touched on there. Next question: how often do you test players in season, and why?
So I think this is, you know, totally different depending on where you go. But my philosophy on testing would be almost, it's not testing. You want to create a system that you continuously monitoring. So whether that be, so like the GPS, you're constantly monitoring. You know, I think when you set up testing and you tell a group of players that it's testing, this is going to alter the behavior of what they do. If they know they've got, I don't know, skin folds, because you've just randomly, you just, it's set, it's coming in there, then people will do all kinds of crazy stuff and not eat for 2 days.
Yeah.
Madness. So if people know that you set up a system where it's going to be skin folds every 6 weeks or every 4 weeks, whatever you believe is the right amount, really do it, because you want this consistency almost. So I think I would, you know, we wouldn't do like any real physical testing in the middle of the season. It would just all be monitoring.
Yeah, that makes sense. Next question comes in from someone who it's about the acute chronic workload ratio and your thoughts on it. And the person who sent it in, the reason I've asked this question is because it's their dissertation topic. So just wondering, firstly, can you just shed some light to the listeners on what the acute chronic workload ratio is, and then what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so it's based on a principle of you look past the past 4 weeks of what a player's done, and then compare that to the last week, and based on certain thresholds that you want to be, if you're below it, you haven't trained enough and you're at injury risk, or you've trained too much compared to the last 3 weeks, that you're at an injury risk. And there's lots of different takes on it, and there's lots of different things you can look at, and obviously it's normally off the GPS, but there's all kinds of different metrics you can look at. It's very up to the practitioner that's in charge of that kind of monitoring, that of what they choose to put in that. You know, there's so many different models. My belief, it's a tool. It's a tool to use it. It's no perfect formula. It's not. I don't think there ever is a perfect formula. There's too much goes into training. There's too much individual differences. You know, for me, I'm a big believer in gym and physical work like this, and different stimuluses are a big part of preparing a player for the week. How do you build in a gym exercise to your running program that you're looking at acute chronic work ratio? How do you how do you build in the nutrition they have? Have they had adequate protein? Where's the blood glucose levels? Have they enough carbohydrate for the week? How do you build in how much sleep they've had? So it's a tool to use as anything, and you have to base it on a multitude of factors. So it has its place. Some people will rely on it more than others. But yeah, I think to summarize on it, it's just for coaches, any coaches out there, it's just one tool. It's not the be all and end all type of thing. It's not a magic formula, I don't believe.
Great, thanks for that. The next question is, so at Newcastle, is there much sport psychology work done at first team level, and if so, how is it incorporated into a player's week?
So we don't have a contracted sports psychologist at the club. So across the two, I'll just talk about this generally because obviously it's very a difficult subject. No individuals across the two clubs and that I've worked at, and across 3 years and all the different players I've seen. There's some people that wouldn't touch it. There's some people that have used it. There's some people that have used it and would openly talk about it. There's some people that have used it and wouldn't talk about it. I definitely think in the future it'll have a bigger place. 100%. I think it's huge. It's if you can get the most out of your mind and how you feel and control them frustrations in a game, how can that not benefit you?
Yeah.
How? I think there's still that little bit of stigma around it, but I definitely think it'll get bigger in the future, 100%.
Yeah. Great. Next question. So this question came in from a coach who is currently a young coach who's currently working at a grassroots level, so non-professional. And he asks, how can coaches who don't necessarily have S&C or sports science support with them as part of their staff, how can he as a coach develop physical qualities within his players? And the example he gives is the ability for his players to repeatedly sprint in order to press and play as part of a high pressing, counter pressing style of play.
Yeah. I mean, to put it simply, like, especially on that is, and I kind of alluded to before, train how you want to play. So if you want to get that out of your players, and obviously you can't do it at a massive intensity 4 days a week. And I guess if it's grassroots, to maybe train twice a week, you can certainly dedicate a portion of that session into doing that. I think it's obviously difficult, study a little bit. I'm not saying go and do a 3-year degree, but check out podcasts like this, reach out to people, generally, like people like in sports science and in this field, we're in it because we want to help people get better. So I think, wherever you are in your region, if you reached out to someone, or I'm sure they'll be willing to help, a small bit. They can't come and take over the whole sports science of the grassroots club, but I'm sure they'll help you with a little bit. But I think the main thing is, like that example, is definitely just train the way you play, and develop general physical qualities in your players if you can, and educate them. You don't have to be the educator almost, but highlight if certainly if coaches, tactical coaches, start to realize the importance of being physically prepared, then that and that's going to gain you selection in the team and maybe push you on further, then players will find ways to get better. Be careful of where you find your information. I guess Instagram's a very accessible place, and there's a lot of information on there. Try to find people that are doing this for a living, people that have degrees in the field. There's plenty of people share information out there. Just be careful where you go for it.
Brilliant. Next
Hopefully
question.
That helps.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. I think that point about reaching out to people who have more knowledge, but also taking independent research yourself and looking into things is so important. Next question, James, is what has been the most valuable thing that you've taken from university into your job?
I would say, I think the most valuable thing from university is almost the boring side. Like, learn to critically read and form your own opinions, especially when you start to write. And it actually goes hand in hand, because when I went back to university after my placement year, I thought my writing was a lot better, because you can read something and read a research article and pick the results out and go, wow, that works. Look, they've just proved it works. But once you've seen it in the field, it's like, how on earth do you replicate that in your day to day? It's just not going to happen. There's things like that, especially things around, if you look at hamstring research, like most papers will tell you to do Nordics, but how do you build it in your training week? Because it's going to cause so much fatigue, and then you go out on the pitch and the manager says we're doing 11v11 today. Someone's going to run at probably within 80-90% of the max velocity, and all of a sudden you went from thinking you're helping someone by protecting the hamstrings to get them stronger, and you've just put them at an increased risk because of what they're going to do the next day, because they're now going to sprint at a high velocity under fatigue. So I think critically read, learn how to take things out of the research papers that may work and may not work, and build that into your writing and your own thoughts, and from there you start to build your own philosophy of how things work. And
Great, that's really insightful. The last question that we're going to look at from the listeners comes from one of the many thousands of sports science students in the UK currently, and they ask, what tips and advice have you got for moving from education into working in the professional game?
I think that comes back to what I said before, like go and volunteer. You hear people say this as well, and it's so true, but there's so, like, the guy from the grassroots club looking to know how to improve repeated sprint ability, go and help one of them grassroots. Because once you've done it at grassroots, actually, really, the process is the same. Yes, the athletes at a different level, but the process of breaking down the question into what they need and how do you integrate it, how do you find a solution, it's the same. It's just a different level of athlete. But the problem and the process that you go through to solve that question is ultimately the same.
Yeah. Great. We're almost out of time, James, but I'm just going to finish with the 4 quick fire questions that I ask all my guests on the podcast. So the first question is, what 3 values are at the heart of your philosophy when you're working with athletes?
I think be honest, build a relationship. Don't know for a third one. I think they're the 2. I think can I go with 2?
Yeah, you go 2.
Be honest, be very honest with your athlete. And I think hopefully you'll get honesty back, and that then ultimately creates a relationship. And I think, as previous guests have alluded to, that is the essence of coaching, is build a relationship with somebody, really.
Yeah. It's the same across sports science, performance analysis, technical, tactical coaching. It all comes back down to the relationship with the athlete, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Second question then, what one thing do you want to learn or improve on in 2021?
So for me, I started a master's in nutrition, and that would be the biggest thing. I think some clubs have full-time nutritionists. We don't at Newcastle at the minute, and even so, it's such a massive interest for me especially this year of COVID. Like, I think nutrition plays a hell of a bigger role in our health than we ever imagined, really. So I'd love to delve into that a bit more and gain me knowledge in there and really start to help athletes improve through nutritional strategies and also improve my own health.
Great. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time?
Somewhere sunny. The northeast is a bit cold and rainy, man.
Yeah. The MLS or somewhere like that.
Yeah, no. So yeah, to answer it more seriously, yeah, for me, I'm not tied to football. I would like a probably more of a lead role in 5 years' time, where I'm really making some bigger decisions on the impact of the athletes and really develop my sort of sports science and strength and conditioning philosophy. But yeah, so if it could be a lead role in a sunny country, then that's the one.
That's the dream, isn't it? My last question for you today, James, is what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So I'm going to go for a cringy one. I think you accept the standards you walk past.
Yeah.
That was from sports scientist. That's a lot, man, and I really like that, because I think if you do all the little, if you take care of all the little things, and you really build your standards and your philosophy from the ground up to have them really high standards all the way throughout, I think you put yourself in a good position.
Brilliant. I think that's a great way to end. James, thanks very much for giving me your time. I know you've just come home from the training ground and after a busy day recovering from the match last night. But thanks so much for coming on. I know this will be just very insightful for coaches at all levels, even people who have experience of working with sports scientists. I'm sure it's been insightful for sports science students who are going through what we went through and who are about to graduate into a hugely competitive industry. So all the advice and tips you've given them will be completely valuable. If you would like to follow James on Instagram, what's your Instagram handle again, James?
James Allan _performance.
Yeah, so you can follow James there. He does produce some good content, so make sure you drop him a follow. But once again, James, thanks so much for joining me. Next week, I've got another very good guest on, and it's going to be the final episode of this current series anyway. So hope you can join me next week. And thanks again, James, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.